Welcome, everybody. This is the first in a long series that I have planned. We're going to go through all through January, probably through February, and maybe way into the future. But if you've been around me for years, you know one of the things that I love is something called my signature course called the Eight Figure Thinker University. It's like about 40 hours. It's so in depth. It is the best training system for peak performance that's out there. And so what I wanted to do, because it's quite heavy, do you know what I mean? I've got other courses that are lighter, but the Eight Figure Thinker is quite heavy, but it's really in depth and it's powerful. So what I wanted to do is take like little snippets of this, right? Little snippets. And what I've called them is neuro performance micro certifications and masterclasses. So my point to all of this is to really give you value, actionable value, because the truth is that the world's a little bit wild right now. Do you know what I mean? The world's a little crazy right now. And the number one thing that's going to give you stability, the number one thing that's going to give you security, the number one thing that's going to give you an income stream that you want is you. Does this make sense? Because there's so many things out there. There's so many systems. You might get caught up in the marketing world and be looking at funnels and how to do this, and it's never quite working. And I don't know your industry. You could be an executive. You could be a coach. You could be a consultant. You could be running an e-commerce store. You could be a founder. If you don't know me, I've kind of worked with everyone over the past 22 years, and we're gonna get into that in a moment. But today, what have we got for you? Well, the first thing that I know is really important, and I mean really important, is taking control of your time, because there never seems to be enough time in the day to get everything done, especially if you've got a side hustle, right? And that's what you're building right now, because you could be running literally a $100 million company, or you could be just having an idea and want to get going. This all starts from the inside. It all starts from an idea, a concept, right? And we have to really treat ourselves like a professional athlete. And one of the things we're going to teach you today is my first thing I want to show you is understanding how the brain really affects how you utilize time. Okay. So, what I've called this is rewiring productivity, the neuro conditioning of time mastery. Neuro conditioning, that's my protocols, and we'll get more into that. Sound good, everyone? Beautiful. So, this is what we're going to go through today. And now make sure that you have your time playbook that you all should have. It's in your email. If it's not in your email, which it is, but if you haven't got it, we can chat about that in about 30 minutes. Okay. So, the agenda for today, week one, and you're here for week one, and that's special. So, understanding the neuroscience of focus and procrastination. Okay. Kind of the opposites, but a push pull, right? So, number two, eliminating low value tasks with the eight figure thinker. MC is members club, because that's what we've just launched, and your mastery playbook. And I want you to reclaim 15 hours plus a week for highly leveraged activities, what I call money moves. Okay. Money moves are highly leveraged activities, meaning, is it going to really create a big ROI if I do this one task? But we often get caught up with all the micro tasks, and that's what we're going to go into. Then we'll look at the Neuro-Optimized Time Block Method, okay? And then we'll look at some NLP. NLP, Neuro Linguistic Programming, is kind of what I'm known for across the world, and it was my foundation, but I've taken things to a whole new level. So let's jump in. Sound good, everyone? Beautiful. Who knows this guy? Who knows this guy, right? You can, I'm going to make sure next time the chat's available, but who knows this guy? Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio is one of the most legendary investors in the world ever. What you don't know about Ray, he might be a mega billionaire, but he comes from working class. He comes from nothing. right? And what he's learned over time is that this is your most powerful asset, okay? So, what he says, and I love this quote, and you're going to see some things repeated over the weeks and months because this is some key things to me. I attribute as much of my success as what I've learned about the brain as I do to my understanding of economics and investing. And when you truly get that, and when you've looked like through 22 years and thousands of clients, like I have from, as I say, from the highest to the lowest, we're just people and anything's possible. And I wanted to put this in there because Ray really is an example of that. Okay. So, whatever you've got planned for 2025, it starts now. Okay. So, that's what I do. Designing genius to see patterns of business, finance, in the future. Not my future, your future. Everyone's future is extremely different. It's unique, okay? So everyone needs customization separately. Everyone needs tailoring separately. And that's why there's no cookie cutter approach to achieving your online business, your physical business, whatever it is. So if you've got lost in the marketing world, I just want to pull you back into understanding that your biggest asset is you, your intuition, your instincts, which we're going to fine tune, is what's going to create the marketing strategy for you. For you, understand that? Because I'm sure that you're really skilled at your trade. But if no one sees this trade, then it doesn't really matter, right? So let's keep going. So, if you don't know me, I've spent over 2 decades helping elite leaders, one, rewire their brains for clarity, which hopefully you get some by the end of today. Um, Definitely clarity, resilience, and blue ocean thinking. Blue ocean thinking is fully expansive thinking. If we took all of the brakes off you, if we took all the boundaries off you, how many steps does it take for you to achieve that ultimate result? It won't be as many as you think. But the challenge is because we don't know how to control this, we don't know how to control our emotions, that peak state, and we're unable to control our acceleration, our flow. And we're going to start to talk more about that today. So, the other thing I do is by fine tuning people, they fine tune their business, which means they attract world class opportunities. Okay. Number three is they build world-class elite networks and transfer that pressure into power, right? That's what we want. And it sounds a little bit Tony Robbins cheesy, but it's the truth, right? Because if you've got a clear goal, a clear mission, we fine tune you, we optimize your business, then we unlock your full potential. And in this crazy economy right now, it's so important that we do this. And this is why I wanted to share all this with you. So, whether you work with me in any capacity from a day, an hour, all the way up to 12 months, so come on and experience with me, or you join the members club, it's okay. I'd love you to, but it's okay. I just want you to get value from everything I share with you each week. Okay. So, what makes this or my neuro conditioning and strategy unique, right? Why does it make unique? Because I split it into three categories: neuroscience, psychology, and proven systems. It's the most important. Neuroscience to program or reprogram or retrain or rewire or recalibrate, right? How you think, act, and lead. The psychology is to create unshakable confidence and peak performance. And we'll get more into this because everything really is about ultimate state changing, roles that you put on, neural nets that you fire at will. Okay. Talk about more of that a little later or another time. Proven systems to expand your influence, income, and impact no matter what the circumstances. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. I've seen them, experienced them, been around them, and I know that you are so much more than you even can comprehend. And I want to leave it at that for now, right? So I've helped leaders like you navigate the toughest challenges and come out stronger, wealthier, and in control. That's my little intro for you, okay? So I want to give you the exact protocols I trained billionaires in, $300 million CEOs, world champions, royalties, celebrities, and eight-figure thought leaders. Same stuff I'm going to give you, okay? For free today. Pretty good. So why now? As I take this little sip. The world is moving fast. Fast. And if you're playing around with AI right now, and I'm deep in that, and I've just had a conversation today for about an hour and a half, I should say, with a venture capitalist who's a good friend of mine and become a good friend of mine. And he has invested since the 90s in AI technology. And what he was sharing with me today, because he actually knows Elon, is wild. Okay. So the world is moving fast. You must invest in yourself and your future to stay ahead of the competition. Because these kids that are coming up, and you might be one of them right now, I'm old now, but they're just following systems and they're not they're not getting in their own way, right? So to stay ahead of this competition is an absolute must. Let's begin. Because understanding neuroscience of focus and procrastination, what the heck does that even mean? Well, what that means is we're going to go a little bit sciencey, and you can ask me some questions after, and I'll keep this light and I'll break it down a different way, okay? But hey, some people out there really want this, and I like to use the neuroscience because it creates tangibility or something that we can touch and feel in this space of understanding. Well, what's the brain do? The mind? What's all of this? Sometimes it doesn't feel tangible. Sometimes it feels airy fairy, right? So if that's a British word, I don't know. But I want to show you this, okay? So the neuroscience of focus, prefrontal cortex, cognitive load theory, dopamine systems, and default mode networks. Does that mean anything to you? Some of you might be able to teach it way better than I can, right? I'm not a neuroscientist, but I use all these concepts and all the psychology and everything to create, and the business strategies to really train you a different way. So, prefrontal cortex, that's simply the brain's focus and decision making hub. It's like the CEO for your brain. It's trying to make logic of stuff, right? Cognitive load theory, multitasking drains energy. Well, yeah, it does. We talk about multitasking doesn't work. Well, let me explain why. Dopamine. Do you know what dopamine is? Do you know what dopamine is? Maybe you can write it. Maybe you're writing it down. Maybe you're going answering it. It's not the reward chemical. It's the motivation brain chemical. And we'll talk about more about dopamine loops and how to engage all of this. But default mode network, you might have never heard that before, but it doesn't matter. We're going to get into that. So the neuroscience, okay. Task switching increases cognitive load and drains prefrontal cortex energy. Dopaminergic reward system reinforces distractions like email and low value tasks. What the heck does that even mean? Okay, let me explain. Dopamine is like a reservoir, okay? It's the motivation chemical, okay? Your brain works like a muscle. It has wiring, it has software. They connect together, okay? Dopamine, the motivation chemical, is produced when something is new. Something is new, novelty, right? That doesn't mean that novelty is good for you. It doesn't mean it's bad for you, but it can be either, right? So you can get dopamine loops, motivation, you get your brain rewarding bad behaviors, okay? So you might be overwhelmed one day and you can't push through, and then you have this amazing idea, or you watch someone's training, or someone tells you about this new get rich quick scheme, right? And you get very excited. Well, guess what happens? Dopamine gets released, that software or the wiring gets connected together, and guess what? It's not good for you. Your path is focused over here and it takes you off path. It can also be something like what we're talking about today, right? With this. So multitasking drains your brain and the hub for your focus and decision making. So each switch between tasks reduces efficiency by 40%. So let me explain. This is for another time. And remember, this is just one page out of an encyclopedia. And so this is all about states. And some of you know this because you've worked with me or been around me or been through the programs or whatever it is. A state is a hat that you put on, a role that you play. Worked with a lot of professional athletes, a lot of fighters. So extreme examples. A professional fighter, okay, is stepping into a ring has a very unique looking way of looking at the world. Does that make sense? Their breathing rates, their heart rates, their micro muscles, their self-talk, their focus, right? It's very unique. Okay. Their belief systems, their attitudes, their language. Imagine that as a bubble. That is not the same version of them as when they go to work or they go on a date or they're talking to their mum, right? Or for you Americans, mom, right? They're very different versions. And if we understand the brain is like a muscle, then what we're doing is pumping these ones. So what happens with multitasking is if you're laser focused over here in what we'll talk about a flow state, right? When you're zoned in, then if you start putting out a fire over here or a fire over here or a fire over there, or you've got to constantly start changing this, what happens is your brain, your prefrontal cortex at the front, right? The decision making, it becomes overloaded. So if it becomes overloaded, the challenge is you can't think clear. And then you're constantly changing neurology. You can't enter that flow. So you can't have the creativity. You can't have the focus. Does that make sense? Right? So why am I telling you that? Stop it. Right? And we're going to talk about more how to do that a little bit later. But solution, you've probably read it, I'm sure. Focus on a single task. We'll talk about how to batch these together. But the neuroscience shows of uninterrupted focus cycles activity of the brain flow state by 500%. So are you already starting to see why we can speed time up, why we can fold time, why some things that other people it might take a year to do, you could do it in 3 months if we started to fine tune you, okay? That goal that you want to achieve, why can't we achieve it in quarter of the time? We can, okay? But it requires a certain skill set. We'll get more into it. So default mode network. Okay, what the heck is this? Well, it's an interesting one, the default mode network, because it it's actually a very important thing. It's a very important part of your brain. And it's got known for, when you mentally wander, right? And some of you might be relating to this. So you can't focus and then you start mentally wandering, right? And or daydreaming or distracting yourself. And I just can't switch on. Been there? We've all been there. Well, that's where the default mode network kicks in, okay? And it's not a bad thing. It's a very good thing. But when it's overactive, right? Constant distraction, it can lead to anxiety. It can lead to mental clutter. It can lead to poor focus, or it can really hinder your creativity. So, what we've got to understand is by not being switched on, right? Not being laser focused, not having that clear goal, not task batching, not being in peak state, not training your brain waves, not training your neurology, not understanding what business system you're using, okay? Not developing anchoring, even down to food, right? Your gut biome, your brain chemicals. If we're not in control of that, or at least managing those things, we become what? Like I've just explained, overloaded. And then we think there's something wrong with you. There's nothing wrong with you, right? You're awesome. I'm sure I haven't met you, maybe. But when we are in control of this, it's a foundational system that supports many high level cognitive processes like strategic decision making, social connection, personal growth, creativity, and innovation. And when we are understanding this, everything changes. So getting control of your default mode network, or basically getting control of your peak state, understanding how to train yourself, then we're kind of going to focus. The brain just wants to focus. The brain wants to make it simple. It's the same with habit formation, right? Habits get a bad rap, but they're really important. It's the bad habits that are the problem, okay? The good habits are what we want to form. That's what breeds you, affects your behaviors, right? So the solution to what I've just explained with the default mode network of the part of the brain is using structured focus sessions to keep your brain's attention, right? That's it. So we'll get more into that in a moment. But making sense so far? Good stuff. So dopamine and distraction. Dopamine is kind of everything. Dopamine is kind of everything, okay? So remember the motivation. So dopamine is like a reservoir, like I explained before, right? And this reservoir gets tapped into. And once you've used that reservoir, it has to refill. And that refilling takes time, okay? But what we often get into the habit of, because silly marketers out there are pushing their way of seeing the world, which drives me absolutely crazy. And it's grinding, it's hustling, right? It's grinding and grinding. Get up, get on the computer, hustle, push, push, push. Those people who are sharing that, that's because they have a terrible, to be honest, a terrible dopamine reward system connected inside of their brain. They're running from the wrong fuel. Fuel meaning the emotion. And often when people are constantly driving and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and not recalibrating themselves, not understanding their nervous system, not understanding flow. What happens is they're running from trauma, to put it blunt. They're running, not well, running from, I suppose is the right term, but running from the emotion or the emotional fuel of trauma, right? Fear, anger, frustration. I don't want to ever be there again. I'm going to do whatever it takes to be here. It's not a bad fuel. It's a good fuel. But just like putting your hand on the fire, right? You can't keep doing that because you're going to create damage. You're going to burn yourself. And burning is scarring, right? Burning is trauma. Burning is deepening the neural pathways that become very difficult over time to release, right? This is what I do for people. So dopamine spikes from distraction like email notifications and low value tasks create a reward loop, keeping you stuck in the inefficiency. So if you're getting up first thing in the day, and I hope to God you're not, and the first thing you're doing is looking on social media, do we know what social media is built around? Yes, dopamine. So what social media does, and even checking and scrolling your emails and going, I've got to do all of these tasks and all of this and all of this, and it's just taking a piece of your dopamine every time. So that's your motivation. So then once you've like taken all of this out the reservoir, then I can't, I've got no energy to do anything. It's not that you've got no energy, it's that you've used all your dopamine. So what we want to do is, we'll get more into this in a little bit, or we'll talk about this another time or another session, or you can ask me in the Q&A after this. It's understanding that we've just got to find where your focus rhythm is, right? Because you might be different. Like I love to focus and be creative first thing in the day. So if I start hammering through emails, if I start going through social media, I can't have the same level of productivity. Some people work amazingly at night or in the afternoon. We've got to learn your rhythm, right? And that's what we do in the members club and all the rest of it. But So, how do you rewire this? Okay. Well, by associating dopamine hits with completing high impact tasks. Remember, money moves. Makes sense? So, is this one thing going to give me the biggest ROI for my dopamine, for my energy? If it's not, and you just find yourself just scrolling and clicking on mad links and all the rest of it, understand this is, you only have so much dopamine in a pie chart. Imagine a pie chart, right? And where are you spending it if you have 100%? That's what you've got to really start becoming aware of. Okay. So keep going. This is why I hate the word grind. Okay. I hate this word grind, but and this is why, because it's literally the definition is to reduce something into a small particle powder by crushing it, right? Crushing it. So if you're I'm going to grind this out. Well, now you know what you're doing is you're not grinding. Well, you are grinding, but you're just depleting, destroying your motivation. Make sense? Make sense? Yeah, I can see all these head nods, right? So all of that, right? Makes sense? Beautiful. So let's jump to number 2. And so let's get your I'm going to go through it, but if you've got your 8-figure thinker members club, right? But time mastery playbook, you can look at it now, but I'm going to go through some things on the slides, okay? So 8, well, let's just look at number 1. So this is how we are going to fix this issue, okay? We're going to fix this issue by time mastery, okay? So what you've got to do is something a little bit tedious. You do. You really have to, well, you have to get a journal. You have to get a notepad. You have to get an app. You have to get a Google Doc. You have to get something and at least start to map out what are you doing. For me, how I do this from personally myself is I run off my calendar, and every calendar piece is connected to a Google Doc. That Google Doc is connected to my assistant, okay, or my team that we're building right now. And so I literally, first thing I do after deep meditation, after using neurofeedback machines, after using binaural beats, after the correct supplementation, right? After all of these things, I've set myself up. My nervous system's in parasympathetic, right? My brainwave's in the correct thing. And and then we're ready to go. And then I go into my calendar and I literally organize my calendar. So to different tasks. So I move things around. I've got certain meetings that are set, right? Like I know on a Wednesday at 1:30 EST right now, that's in my calendar. So for these live sessions, these micro masterclasses with you. So I know I'm not going to load up so much before this stuff in the morning, but Wednesdays now from today are becoming my creating presentations, podcast um, recording. These are things that aren't going to burn me out. Okay. So, what you've got to do is really start working out what's going on. So, identify low value tasks, implement task chunking, which we'll talk about more and maybe in the Q&A a little bit in a moment, time block strategies. And we'll talk about what the ultradian rhythm is in a moment, and it's kind of important. And then what you do is reclaim high level tasks or money moves, right? My money move time, my money move time, my money move time, right? So this week, I know key strategies. I know we're going to be hiring 1 to 2 new people. And these are full cycle salespeople, these are outreach people. And so I know I need to prepare for them, right? And so that's a high leverage task, but it's not going to take too much brain power. So where am I putting that in my day? Where am I putting this in my week? Make sense? So exactly what I just said. Conduct the time audit. Okay. So high value to low value task grid. Okay. Now, This is all in your time playbook, so make sure you've got that. But high value, high leverage, money moves, strategic activities like I've just spoke about, building client relationship, closing deals. So like I said today, I had a meeting with a friend of mine who's a very high level VC, and I don't know how many deca millions he's got. Amazing guy, always fun conversations. But the truth behind it is it doesn't task me, right? So high value, low leverage, necessary but repetitive tasks. Okay. So that was me preparing for these meetings. Low value, high leverage, low value, low leverage. Okay. So analyze your time distribution. Identify the percentage of your week. You get the idea. Go through that playbook. So then we move on to NLP techniques for productivity. But everyone with me through all of this, okay? And the reason why we're doing it is because, yes, right. So moving over to number two, NLP techniques for productivity. And if you've worked with me or been around me, then you're going to really understand what these are, okay? So chunking, very important, state anchoring, visualization breaks. But where this leads to is this. It doesn't really matter all of these tactics and strategies if we haven't developed that state, the identity, who you are, right? So many marketers and people in business get this so wrong. It's constantly external. Let's create the outcome and the processes. Okay, that's great. But the challenge becomes if you're not thinking like an eight-figure thinker, right? You can't work with eight-figure clients or you can't lead your business to eight figures because that identity version of you is thinking, feeling, and acting a very different way. Their creativity, their expansiveness, their belief system is going to create different processes. They're going to create different outcomes. If you are absolutely freaked out, stressed, that version of you has an emotion that's driving your view of the world. That view of the world at that moment could be very reactionary. It could be very weak. It could be very self-defecating, right? That isn't going to shoot for the stars. Does that make sense? So the identity of who you are and what I teach as an eight-figure thinker is the most important thing. My question, who are you really if you were unlimited? Right? I know there's someone on the call I'm actually working with tomorrow, who the truth is he's shooting for the stars in 2025. We've worked together before, doing sessions tomorrow, and that is huge, huge. I've seen the goals that he's setting, and they're huge. But huge compared to who? Do you know what I mean? Huge compared to a billionaire? No, right. So we have to level up his thinking. So NLP technique, use mental chunking to group related tasks to reduce reduce decision fatigue, combining with state anchoring to create a ritual. So what I spoke about in the morning, when I do in the mornings, it's creating these rituals to be able to put myself into those states. So I know I can focus on, as an eight-figure thinker, I can focus on high priority work. Okay. So again, we can't go into all this today, obviously, and we've gone well over time already before we jump into Q&As, but it's not surprising with me. So 90-minute cycles and ultradian rhythm. So this is what I want to get to. So what is an ultradian rhythm? It's late at night here. I have dyslexia, so my brain starts to stumble over words. If you know me, you know that's true. So what you got to understand is that it's really a rhythm that enhances, it's a brain rhythm, right? But that enhances productivity, creativity, and overall performance. Okay. So what we want to do here is really tap into these and understand when to step out of them. Because we've probably heard of the Pomodorian, like 20 minutes of focus. That's never made sense to me, right? If I'm locked in, I want to be locked in, right? I want to be locked in for hours if possible. But we're talking about a 90-minute cycle. That's where our nervous system goes into sympathetic. Sympathetic is what we want, and we want to be in beta brainwave. Okay, lots of techniques for another time. Da 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 da. But beta brainwaves means that we're active, switched on. Sympathetic nervous system means that we're going. The challenge is if we keep pushing that, we're going to get burnout, right? And it causes so many problems. Again, topics for another time. So what we want to do is after 90 minutes, we want to take 15 minutes and we want to literally just calm ourselves down, right? And we all know how to get back into parasympathetic. Oh, wrong. Wait, we'll go back. Parasympathetic is your calm nervous system, your rest and digest, right? But what we want to be able to do here is 60 to 90 minutes of focus, 15 to 30 minutes of break, right? And you restore by stretching, hydrate, walk, meditate, brain waves, whatever it is, just to calm you down. And then we know the next cycle in our brain is coming, and we can go into flow again. Make sense? I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense. So let's keep going. As I say, this is only supposed to be a short presentation today. So one of the just to give you an understanding of the power of this, business consultant, client of mine, Sarah, because we did this, she actually reclaimed 20 hours a month. Okay. 20 hours a month might not seem a lot, but it is, because we're only doing probably 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day working. Okay. So those other times what she was doing is just spinning wheels. But when we were able to laser focus with her, when we're able to switch her on, when we're able to train the neurology to in these peak states, when we were able to delete the mistakes that were spinning around in her mind from business partners or business failures, right? Or trauma from the past, when we were able to clean that up and teach her these systems, suddenly, yeah, she went and closed, 150K very, very quickly, to be honest. And that's the power of this stuff, okay? So break through a limiting cycles and scale a business. And it was really awesome to see. And when someone works with me one-on-one, or it's going to be the same in the membership club, it's just, I really care. And it kind of hurts me. Um, it kind of hurts me when someone doesn't get the results. And I just, I give them more, I give them more, I give them more, and that's what I just want for you. So hopefully this has been helpful today. I really hope this has been helpful. And then we'll jump into the Q&A in a moment. And yeah, we'll let you speak if you want to speak or whatever you want to do. So next step, complete the time mastery playbook. Step 2, identify low value tasks to eliminate this. Step 3, guess what? Implement the first 90-minute neuro-optimized time block, okay? Step 4, well, make sure that you're hanging out with me and everyone else next week. Scaling without sacrifice. That's next week's topic. What I am going to do in the Q&A, I'm going to make sure that you have other resources, okay? Make sure that you've got the playbook if you haven't, and make sure that you, make sure that you have the link to the WhatsApp group. But this is where you can find me, andymurphy.online, 8figurethinker.com. Well, come listen to the podcast. We've done over 3 million downloads, over 400 episodes, and I've got 9 interviews sitting there, ready to go. So that's it, guys. Let's jump into the Q&A.